Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Father Ted Talks Faith in Action. Today, I just want to answer a very kind of simple question that a lot of people have asked me when it comes to eulogies in funerals, right? So, of course, a lot of us have been to funerals, and I'm sure most of you have seen the two videos that I've already posted on, the theology of death, and also our practical walkthrough, a guide that I made about how to prepare properly for Orthodox funerals. But this particular video, I wanted to address the specific question about why don't we have any eulogies in Orthodox funerals, right? And what do I mean by that? It doesn't mean that the priest does not speak within a funeral, but there are no eulogies in the Orthodox tradition in the sense that we do not have lay people come up to the platform to speak on behalf of the family, nor should a priest be reading a statement that is produced by the family, whether it be an obituary or some other type of speech that has been prepared by the lay people for the priest. And so I know a lot of people kind of get confused with this because, in the Orthodox Church, you will see some churches, unfortunately, or some jurisdictions, or even some individual priests, who might do this. But I'm talking about the official, guidelines of our church, at least our Greek Orthodox Church here in Canada, but usually the official guidelines of most Orthodox churches throughout the world, right? The official guideline, the official decree of our bishop here in Canada, but also of the Patriarchate and of all other places, is that, we don't read eulogies in the church. Now, why don't we do this? Well, there are a couple of reasons. It's not because the church wants to be difficult or because priests don't want to, be accommodating to grieving families and things like that. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, first of all, a theological reason, and second of all, a practical reason, and also a canonical reason. So let's start with the canonical reason. So number one is, why don't we have lay people come up and speak in the church? Well, this is very clear because the canons of the church say that lay people who are not ordained are not allowed to speak within the church. This has to do with spiritual quality control, like that, only the people who are trained within the church to sermonize, to speak the word of God, which is the only thing that should be spoken within the context of the church itself, the nao, the temple, should only be those who are ordained and who are given the authority to do that. And so canonically, only the priest or the bishop or the deacon should be speaking within the church, right? So that's one reason why we don't have lay people come up, as in other Christian traditions, to give speeches or eulogies within the context of an Orthodox funeral service. Number two, practically, is that, a lot of times people in their grief, they will write a lot of things about their loved ones who have passed away. And most of the time, they're very beautiful things, very beautiful sentiments about the person's life, about maybe, what they were about, the things that they loved, the type of family people that they were. And all those things are wonderful. But those things are not within the context of the Orthodox funeral service. Those things are personal kind of, remembrances and expressions of love that the family gives through an obituary that is posted in the newspaper and online. And those are things that should be expressed by the family members themselves, not by the priest, who may or may not have known the person who has passed away, but from the actual people who love that person. And that's why the appropriate place for these things to be read by family members is either at the gravesite, that's acceptable, or at the makaria, the mercy meal that is usually done in the Orthodox tradition after the funeral, right? So usually the family, after they go to the cemetery and the interment takes place, usually everybody is invited either to a restaurant or back to the church hall where they have a meal in honor of the person who has passed away. In our particular church here at Prophet Elias, we set up a microphone in the hall when people come back for the meal where anybody can really go up and express their gratitude, express their thoughts and their prayers and their memories of the loved one. And I think that is the most beautiful way to do eulogies, at least in this context, because it is coming from the heartfelt, actual memories of the people who actually knew the person, and not just from a paper that is given to the priest to be read in the church. The third, though, and the most important thing is that we have to understand what the Orthodox funeral service is about and what it's supposed to be. So the Orthodox funeral service is not about remembering necessarily the individual person, what they did and who they were and things like that. All the people who have come to the funeral already know these things because they're there for their loved one who has passed away, because they knew them, because they knew what kind of a good person they were, because their lives, the life of the person who's passed away, touched their lives. And so everybody already knows these things, and everybody has already read the obituary. The purpose of the Orthodox funeral service is to pray for the soul of the person, and to express the theology of death and the hope of the resurrection. This is the number one thing that we are doing in the Orthodox context, right? So if you pay attention, when the person is brought into the church, there's all this symbolism, which we've talked about before, the symbolism of the burial shroud that covers the person, which is the baptismal robe, which is the light of the resurrection, the wheat, which represents death and resurrection again, being buried and growing again, the oil and wine, the first fruits of the earth. All these things, all these symbols are there to remind us that this is not the end. And the sermon that the priest is supposed to give, it's not a eulogy, it's a sermon. And a sermon is something very different. It is not a remembrance of everything the person was, but rather it is a teaching moment that the priest is supposed to use when everybody is there to speak about not only the individual, but more about where the individual is going, where their soul is going, what is happening to them, what happens to all of us in death, and to help prepare and give solace and comfort not only to the family, but to everybody who's there, to teach them about the Orthodox understanding of death and of the resurrection. And this is the most important time, and it is one of the most beautiful times to sermonize and to get that message across and to delve into the issue of death and mourning and why it happens to us, and what are we responsible for, and what is God responsible for, and what can we look forward to in the resurrection. This is the time for the priest to really speak to these types of topics. And so the theme is the resurrection. The theme is hope. The theme is, Christ's conquering of death by death. Those are the things that the priest is mandated to speak about in the funeral service, not to read eulogies. This is why we have letters from our bishop forbidding us from doing this, and many, many bishops always instruct their priests not to read eulogies, not to make the Orthodox funeral service simply into another wake or another viewing or another memorial. It is not that. It is something that is profound. It is almost not a mystery like the sacraments, the rest of the sacraments, but it is mystical. It is mysterious. It is something that is profound. And we lose that opportunity when we relegate the sermon of the priest to simply reading an obituary from the family, which again can be beautiful, but it is not its place inside the actual Orthodox funeral service. And so this is the official position of our Orthodox Church in Canada. And so when we ask the priest to do this and the priest is not able to do it, we shouldn't get upset about it, but rather we should ask the question, why is this not allowed? And then be able to understand the reasons behind it. So this is kind of like a breakdown of why we don't have eulogies in Orthodox funeral services. They can be done at grave sites, they can be done at Macarius, at the mercy meals, but they are not supposed to be done by the priest inside the context of the funeral service. I hope this was helpful. I hope it kind of clears up this particular topic, and we will see all of you in the next couple of weeks. Till then, take care and God bless.